Good evening. We begin tonight with the rapidly unfolding story here in Washington. Leaders at both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue are now confronting a test to the American system. Uncertainty has gripped institutions and sectors: healthcare, the economy, national security, and politics. President Trump declared a national emergency on Friday, 2 days after addressing the nation about the novel coronavirus.
The action I am taking will open up access to up to $50 billion for states and territories and localities in our shared fight against this disease. We're announcing a new partnership with private sector to vastly increase and accelerate our capacity to test for the coronavirus. We want to make sure that those who need a test can get a test very safely, quickly, and conveniently.
And on Capitol Hill, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has worked all week on a sweeping aid package with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin.
To put families first, our legislation secures paid leave with 2 weeks of paid sick leave and family and medical leave for those affected by the virus. And for those who lose their jobs, we are strengthening unemployment insurance, a critical step to protect workers' economic security.
Then, earlier Friday evening, the Speaker announced that she has, quote, reached an agreement with the administration to resolve outstanding challenges. Joining me tonight to open their notebooks are 4 reporters who have deep sourcing and insights into the Washington dynamics of this global pandemic. Kimberly Atkins, senior Washington news correspondent for WBUR, Boston's NPR news station. Toluse Olorunnipa, White House reporter for The Washington Post. Susan Page, Washington bureau chief for USA Today. And Heidi Przybyla, correspondent for NBC News. Susan, we begin with you. Writing a biography on Speaker Pelosi, she is at the center of the action as we come to this table tonight. It is unclear whether President Trump, at this moment, 8 p.m. on Friday night Eastern Time, will actually sign on to her agreement that she announced. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin was on Fox Business a few minutes ago saying there is an agreement. What can you tell us about where this is all heading over the weekend?
Well, Nancy Pelosi did reach an agreement, but it was with the Treasury Secretary, not with the president. And I think the negotiations we see going on now are between Mnuchin and his boss, Donald Trump. It's really extraordinary that we find a situation where it's not clear to us if the Treasury Secretary can competently speak for the president. And House Republicans are holding off on endorsing this deal until they hear from Trump. Nancy Pelosi has suggested she might bring this up for a vote anyway tonight. Even if Republicans don't sign on, she could probably get it through the House. But without Trump support, probably can't get it through the Senate and certainly couldn't get the president to sign it.
Why are House Republicans, Tolu, waiting for President Trump?
Because they are completely tied to him ever since the 2018 midterms, in which so many of the moderate Republicans lost their seats. The remnants of the Republican Party has become the Trump Party. They have realized that if they're going to keep their seats, if they're going to be able to have any future in the party, they have to be completely tied to President Trump and really wait for his call in terms of what exactly they're going to do. Whether or not they can support this is going to be based on whether or not the president tweets something saying, I support this bill. So far, there's a lot in this bill that Democrats like: paid family leave, sick leave, support for the uninsured. There's not a lot of what President Trump wanted when it comes to things like trying to get a payroll tax cut or other tax cuts for businesses or industries that he thinks are impacted by this pandemic. So right now, President Trump is sort of waiting to see whether or not he will support this. And until he says so, these House Republicans are not going to move.
The troubling part is that he's known what they're negotiating, the broad outlines, the broad contours of it. And he's also known that the reason why the markets were soothed today was on the expectation that there would be such a deal. And what the specific outlines of that were known to all of us. So if the president at this hour is not supportive of this deal, what more is it going to take? Because Pelosi did compromise as well on a number of elements in here, like the payroll tax cut, or like the payroll tax cut, which the president wanted actually, but also they were going to use tax credits, I believe, instead of direct assistance. So she's compromised her part. And if we get to Monday and the Senate comes back, which Mitch McConnell has made clear they're coming back, they're not going to take the recess, and the president hasn't signed on to this, get ready for another wild ride.
And we're looking at, Kim, a Washington that is divided along Pennsylvania Avenue. Speaker Pelosi pursuing her agreement with the Treasury Secretary, President Trump at the same time declaring a national emergency. What do you make of the standoff as a reporter?
Well, Donald Trump, the president, wants to seem that he is in control of this, that he's always been in control of this, and blaming everyone else for everything that goes wrong. So in that sense, he doesn't want Nancy Pelosi to be the face of what is moving forward. Now, you're saying that Washington is divided right now. One thing that coronavirus has done on the Hill is unite lawmakers. Lawmakers were looking to get some sort of relief and get some sort of relief quickly. Lawmakers were unified in their condemnation of administrators, people in the administration who went before Congress this week to explain how we got to this point on coronavirus. It angered people on both sides of the aisle. The division is between the Hill and Pennsylvania Avenue. And you have Donald Trump, who has been angry throughout the week about how things have gone, who have, like I said, sought to divert attention to other places. And now he's trying to control it. To allow Nancy Pelosi politically to take the narrative and to take that victory lap is probably very difficult for him.
You know, it's hard to reach a deal when the president and the Speaker of the House are not speaking.
Right.
And they haven't been speaking since impeachment, for which Donald Trump is bitter and blames Nancy Pelosi for handling. But you know, there's something like this that happened before, which is during 2008, you know, the big financial meltdown. Speaker Pelosi was in office and George W. Bush was in the White House. They had not spoken for months because of her opposition to the Iraq War. But when the economy melted down, he did talk to her. They did do negotiations that got a crucial bailout bill through. And I see echoes of that in this debate today.
That's such an important point, because you think about this moment, how do we give it context? And that 2008 example is a key one. But inside the White House, do they see this as a moment where it requires bipartisanship, and perhaps on the payroll tax cut and other issues, the White House may have to give?
Well, 2008 was the end of George W. Bush's presidency. He wasn't running for re-election. President Trump is running for re-election, and that has made so much of a difference in terms of how this White House is responding. They're looking at this through a political lens. They're looking at the stock market. The president is looking for ways to sort of boost his position before the election, even the payroll tax cut that he's talking about. He wants it to last through the election so that Americans aren't hurt economically as they go to the polls to decide whether to give him another 4 years in office. So that's a major difference in the way President Trump's White House is dealing with this, and one of the reasons why it's been difficult to get Republicans and Democrats on the same page.
Moving these things quickly, though, is there's no parallel to this in terms of the importance of getting this done quickly, because this deal is not even done, and we're talking about having to potentially do a third round now of economic stimulus, possibly helping specific industries. And the whole point here is to soothe a very panicked nation. And in doing that, you want to try and do it quickly to show that at least Washington is all on the same page in getting America what it needs. What the things that have been happening in other countries where we know that, you know, these things have worked in terms of getting people to stay home when they are sick. The one thing that makes us really unique from Europe is the fact that we don't have paid sick leave. And so getting that message out to people that we understand the historic calamity that this could cause, and getting everybody on the same page, I just don't see how this isn't going to work against him if they don't get this done this weekend.
And your point about a third round of deals and negotiations, it's very possible. When I was on Capitol Hill this week, everyone's talking about they already had the $8 billion deal. They're doing this deal now. But if the economy continues to move to full stop, you could see bailouts of industries being discussed, a whole array of major measures from the Federal Reserve to Congress to deal with this crisis.
Yeah, if we're heading into a recession, and there are a lot of signs that we are, it could be a deep recession. It could be a serious recession. It could strike every corner of this nation because of the nature of this pandemic that we're facing. And at that point, you will need Congress and the White House to be doing some things to juice the economy. Because for one thing, the Federal Reserve has done a lot of what it has to do. It has exhausted a lot of the remedies they would have for helping an economy that's fallen into a recession.